right, we are live here. This is Daniel Gold with the GTD Virtual Study Group, and this is great because this is the first time that we're not only live in the virtual studio, but we're live in the virtual studio with the Google Plus Hangout. This is really great. I'm being joined by the one and only Mike Vardy, calling in from Canada. Mike, how are you today?
I'm doing great, loving it. It's a beautiful long weekend. I mean, how could you not love it?
I know. This is exactly what I like to have. Nice long weekends, enjoy time with the family, and it also gives me a lot of time to figure out how to capture, which, strangely enough, that is the theme of today's program. You know, Mike, I wanted to have you on the show for a lot of reasons, and I want to have you give an introduction as to who you are. But one of the things that so many people contact me about, and I know they contact you about as well, Mike, is talking about this idea of how to be able to effectively get everything that's on your mind off of your mind into a trusted system so that you can later process that information, organize it to where it goes, whether it's something that's task-based, whether it's something that is reference-related material, and then be able to review it in order to be able to get things done. And
Right.
the challenge is, and the theme of what I really want to talk to you about today, Mike, and the reason I brought you on, because you are, in my mind, a real expert in this area, is this idea of being able to effectively capture and collect everything that's on your mind in a way that will allow us to be far more productive, far more efficient, and that's why I brought you on. So, Mike, why don't you take a moment, introduce yourself, who you are, what it is that you do, and what you believe makes you an expert to be on the program today.
Well, thanks, Daniel. I'm Mike Vardy, Productivityist.com. So I'm a productivity specialist. I've initially started out being a productivity parody person. For those of you who have followed me for a while, you might have a sense of when I was doing eventualism, which was initially known as effing the dog. And it was like basically a parody of GTD. And when I was doing that, I got the attention of David Allen, and they said, hey, write for the GTD blog. And so I started to, and lo and behold, I've become the very thing I was parodying. But the thing that fascinated me the most about just being more productive, and the whole practice and systemization of it. I'm big on approaches. I'm big on systems. I'm big on that kind of stuff. And the genesis, and my background actually is improv, which is great because one of the things I was thinking about as we were preparing for this call is improv is the genesis of sketch comedy, which is something I did for quite a while as well. And the improv part is kind of like when you're doing improv, if you have anything pre-planned in your head, then you're not doing improv. Like you literally have to go with the flow. And what would happen is anything that happened while we were on stage at improv, we would workshop, if it worked, later to turn it into a sketch. So essentially, we were capturing things in that regard to build something better or different or something that may have a resonance elsewhere later on that was, built from something that happened in the moment. And that's the thing that I believe that capture really, once you start to build the capture habit, that's the kind of thing that you can start to do is you can say, hey, I have this idea, I better write it down. Instead of doing, oh, well, I'll wait till I get home, or I'll evaluate it in my head before I write it down, because that's a common thing is you'll say, oh, well, I have this great idea for this project. Well, you're humming and hawing about it in your head, and that's when you come across, the resistance that Stephen Pressfield talks about, or lizard brain, or whatever way you want to go, as Seth Godin says. But the key is that your brain, and David Allen talks about this, lots of people do, needs to do the real work. So when you start to capture things, whether it's digitally or analog or a combination, which is what I do, it lets your brain do the real work, the work that it's meant to do, because you've sort of automated the process of, hey, I have this thing, I better get it down somewhere that I trust so that I can put it into the place that I trust it to be when I want to revisit it later, yeah.
So you've laid a ton of stuff on, so let me backtrack, right? This is all really, really good stuff. So first of all, all right, so you're obviously very well experienced in this. You are a blogger, you are a writer, you are a podcaster, you are a speaker, and also a coach on all things productivity, right?
Yeah.
Got them all. Okay.
All there, yeah, all five.
It is the rule of 5 today.
Yeah.
So you've got all that, and so you lay a lot of foundation down as far as the importance of capturing, as well as just the general idea of productivity. Now, you've also written a couple of books as well, Mike, correct?
That's true. Yeah.
Can you tell us what those books are? I just want to lay some more context and more foundation.
Sure. Sure. So, I mean, the books that I've got, one is I've got three major books. One is The Front Nine: How to Start the Year You Want, Anytime You Want, and that's a published book through Diversion Books, and you can get that at Amazon or Barnes and Noble or iBooks or whatever. Then there's the Productivityist workbook, which I break down 4 of the components of productivity into separate, sort of digestible little actionable areas. And it's not a very large workbook, but it's actionable. And you can get that at my site. And I've also written The Now Year, a practical guide to calendar management, which focuses more on the calendar component. And I'm starting to develop more stuff around that. That's larger. That's where you're talking about the coaching. So I'm working on some online courses right now. Currently doing a book with Jeremy Roberts of Cloud Productivity called Do Better with Asana. And it's going to be more than just a book. It'll be a whole mess of stuff that has to do with Asana. So that's what those do. And again, in all of those books, the element of capture comes into play heavily.
So it's fair to say then, just laying down the foundation again, it's fair to say, Mike, that with everything that you do, that that you've got a very credible voice that's out there across social media and obviously in person on this topic, right?
It would take a lot of cojones for me to call myself a productivityist if I didn't.
Fair enough. And you and I share a common passion as well with another app that's out there called Todoist, and
Yes.
You and I have been talking a lot about some of our own personal successes, and a lot of capturing has to do there. Now, let me lay the foundation down a little bit more for us, okay?
Okay.
So here's the thing, and I also do, a lot of the same as you. I do a lot of coaching with executives and small business owners of the like, and talking about productivity. And here's the thing, right? So you walk into a meeting, and what do we have, right? We got a legal pad, right? Mm-hmm. This one happens to be made by Doan Paper, a guy by the name of Chad Doan, right? It's great, it's great pad, grid plus lines. I like it. So we've got this. I'm going to lay it on the floor for a second, okay? I've got over here also, Mike. I've got a red moleskin, right?
Yes.
And some people will yell at me. It's moleskine, right?
There was actually a recent sketch on Portlandia where they talked about moleskins, and they called them moleskins. So I'd say we're okay.
All right. So I use this for meetings. Okay, I'm gonna put this on the floor. Right. Moleskine came out with a meeting notebook, and so I thought, well, that's great, right? Because what I could do is I could it's specially designed so that I can actually put my meeting notes in here correctly.
Right.
So I thought that was good. Okay, I'm going to lay this on the floor. Our friend Olaf had created the White Lines Link book.
Mm-hmm.
So the White Lines Link is good because it has an app for Android and OS where you could just put the phone over the picture of your notebook, and it'll snap it and it'll put it into Evernote. You could print Springpad, Dropbox, right? Damn Michael Hyatt, right? So he came up, he said, ecosystem is the way to go, not Moleskine, because it's got perforated sheets. So I bought that, and plus it's Evernote green, so I loved it.
Of course.
Rhodia actually comes out with a really good one too, another meeting notebook. So I'm like, well, this is great.
You should be flashing up affiliate links on the page.
I know, right? I make a killing right now, right? Our buddy Jim over at Field Notes, right?
Yep.
So I've got this. Evernote memo books, right?
Yep.
I've got the Rhodia aligned. Yep. I've got the Word notebooks.
Yep.
I've got the Doan Paper memo books here somewhere. I even have index cards, Mike, on my desk.
Oh, the old hipster PDA stuff that Merlin Mann used to talk about.
Listen, Merlin Mann was onto something, and I'll tell you what, I've got about 50 of these things in the garbage can right now after I've jotted down little tasks and ideas because I'm capturing it. I won't throw these because then they'll go all over the place. And I've also got the Moleskine, the Evernote Post-it notes.
Yeah.
Right? I got all 4 colors. I actually spent the $15 because I needed to, right? And
see, now, if you went to South by Southwest, you wouldn't have to spend the money. I actually have the big idea ones too. I have the big Evernote ones.
Oh no! Well, that also required admission in flight to.
But needless to say, there's a lot of you've got like capturing. You've got like yeah. Oh, you've got more. Okay.
Well, this is the last one. I saved the best for last.
Oh, this is the shower one.
This is awesome, right? And you can see over here if you can. So I actually ripped off a piece, so I actually had an idea, and so I really do use this. Okay. Help me, Mike. I mean.
Well, see, here's a trick I use in the shower, actually. Because my kids are young enough still, is that they have those soap chalks. So I'll actually just write it out on the, and
And
then
grab the Evernote camera.
well, and you kill two birds with one stone there, right? Because you're first off, your kids get this awesome chalk. You get
Right.
your idea down, and then you have to clean the shower. So everybody, like, it's you're multitasking without actually multitasking.
Oh,
So,
I love it. I love it.
but
I could save money on the aqua pads next
But
time.
here's the thing: is that I mean, and we all do this. Is once we get the hang of the bigger picture stuff when it comes to productivity, is that we have intent behind each of those things. So I mean, for example, you and I are definitely edge cases in that we have all these different notebooks because I've got the Confidant by Baron Fig. I've
Oh
got
yeah.
some Field Notes ones. I've got some Scout books. I mean, I've got Moleskines. I've got the Evernote Moleskine, the larger one. There's the new business one that just came out, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, we're edge cases. But by the same token, we have the ones we like to use, we have intent behind. You know what I mean? Like, this notebook is for this. This notebook is for that. Whereas when you're first starting to learn to capture, less is more in terms of types of books that you may have. So, for example, field notes are a great example because field notes are generally inexpensive. They come in, if you get the subscription, which I think is like $97 a year, you get 6 to 9 notebooks sent to you every quarter.
Wow.
Well, if you're going, I mean that, and the beauty part about those is that, like, I have a Field Notes notebook in every single jacket pocket that I have, along with a
Oh,
pen.
you know what? I
Yeah.
forgot. I
Yeah, what
forgot.
do you have in there? Yeah. But that's the thing, because the key to capture isn't so much about what you have, it's where you have it.
So, but, all right.
Because
So what
go
does it
ahead.
mean then? What does it mean then, Mike? What does it mean to say I'm going to capture information?
Anything that comes into your head, as David Allen said, mind like water. Anything that comes into your head that's an idea, a thought, a task, whatever. If it's something that you know, and believe me, it is, that you want to retain later, get it captured. And I mean, you could put it on your phone, right? Like, I mean, there are capture tools on the phone, which we'll get to in a little bit, I'm sure. But paper is the easiest thing to capture things on for a number of reasons. Number one, it doesn't require load time. You could pull it
Mhm.
out and you just write it down and it's done. Number two, if you have these all in your jacket pocket and you happen to lose one, you're not sitting going, okay, I've lost this, this precious thing. I mean, they do become more precious over time. And we'll also talk a little bit about how we move them from that place to the other place because, as I capture stuff, it doesn't stay there. But it's all about building that habit. It's all about saying, hey, you know what? Anytime I have an idea, any idea, as stupid as, you look in the fridge and you're like, oh, we're out of lemons, write it down, buy lemons, like
But
right then
why?
and there.
But why? Why? See,
Because
I mean, think about it, right?
because
Okay.
we are terribly, human beings are terribly forgetful. I've been reading this new book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown, and you've probably seen it. It just came out the 15th of April, and we like to think our brains are better equipped to handle the creative, long form building thing. That's what our brains are better designed for. But our brains like to just have to survive, right? Like, they just like I mean, as long as I have food and shelter and all that stuff, because that's the primitive part of our brains. But one of the things that he challenges you to do, he says, I want you to take this exercise. He goes, I'd like you to remember what you had for breakfast on March 15th. I mean, that's not something I would think to remember. And then he said, I'd like you to remember what the 3 tasks were that you had to do on December 14th, 2012. Again, not something I would keep in mind. But if you go into a digital system, if you go to your computer and you're using, like, say, a task management system, you could look back at that date, or you could use something like you could if you're journaling, right? If you're journaling on a digital journal or you have a paper journal, you could look back and see that stuff as well. So the reason that we want to capture that stuff is because we think we're so smart. We're not that smart. We can only be smart when we have all that information. And when our brains are trying to remember and recall that information, we're using energy and resources to recall that information instead of using our brains to process and build something with that information. Does that kind of answer your question?
It does. In fact, actually, I'm going to write down the name of the book that you were telling
Mm-hmm.
me here.
Yeah.
I'm going to capture that.
Sure.
So that way we can put it in the show notes here. So Here, it's true, I did.
Yeah, no, I saw you.
Here's what I'm wondering though. Does it really matter what I had for breakfast last Thursday? You know,
No,
if I open up the refrigerator though and I say, okay, I'm out of lemons and I need to get lemons, aren't I going to remember that when I'm at the store anyway? That won't my brain really be wired enough to, as I'm walking through the produce section, to say, I need lemons?
it might. It might. It might remember. You may see
Hmm.
lemons and your brain goes, oh yeah, I remember when I opened that fridge on Thursday that I need lemons, but it may not. In fact, it probably won't. And the other thing about it is that as long as it's in your brain, sitting there going, buy lemons, don't forget to buy lemons, until it's captured somewhere, your brain thinks it still has to be done. So your brain sits
Got it.
back, and I mean, and David Allen's talked about this as well. So everything that you leave in your brain, again, mind like water, basically it becomes rapids, right? The more that's in there,
Hmm.
and how easy is it to navigate rapids versus navigating a still pond? I mean, the most seasoned, rafter may have problems with really torrential rapids. If you have no experience navigating rapids and you're dealing in like literal rapid water, you would never go. You would never even dream to do that. But even in a pond, in a still pond, you could row, you could navigate your way around because you can see it's. You're not worried as much about hey, what's going on here? I'm rocking the boat or whatever. So the problem is that if you have all this stuff in your head and you don't have it captured in a place that your brain knows, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. I put all the things I need to get at the grocery store, the things I know I need to get, in Evernote, in Listly, on a notepad, or in this specific notebook that I use only for grocery shopping. If you use that, then your brain goes, all right, oh, lemons. Okay, I'm going to put it inside. I'm going to capture it and then move it to that notebook or move it to that system. And then when it's time to go grocery shopping, your brain doesn't have to go, okay, well, what do I have to get? Your brain goes, oh, where is that notebook? Where is that app? That's what it does, which is far easier for your brain to do than to deal with the whole idea of, okay, well, let's remember what I should have written down eons ago, or I'm in the middle of the grocery store. I mean, how many times have you gone grocery shopping and bought stuff you didn't need, and then come home and gone, oh, lemons? Probably a lot.
Actually, what happens is when I come home from the grocery store, Mike, with stuff that wasn't on the pre-approved list by my wife, I typically
Yeah.
get in trouble.
Yeah,
Uh,
same here. So that's the fight or flight thing, right? So.
yeah. So, as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, well, in reality, clearing your mind, capturing everything down, whether it's digital or whether it's analog, and
Mhm.
getting it out of your head to free your mind so that you have space for other things that are more important, it's almost like the importance of having inbox zero. Would you say that's correct?
Um, I would say that your brain being at inbox zero is probably more important. That inbox zero is great. To have your brain at inbox zero, that's the inbox zero you want. I know Merlin Mann's talked about it, and he's said time and time again that what people have interpreted inbox zero to be is not at all what it's really supposed to be about. But in this case, I would agree that yeah, if your brain is at its has as little storage in there. I mean, it's like again, if you walk into a crowded warehouse, you're not going to be able to move around very well, let alone find anything. But if you walk into a very well organized warehouse and you go, oh, well, look, it's all well labeled and all that stuff, that's the way you want your brain to be. You want your brain to be as free to go, okay, what do I do with this stuff? The stuff that I've written down, as opposed to what stuff do I have? Because that's not. I mean, that's why computers are so great, because you can say, and that's why I use a digital task manager for long form projects, right? Because your brain doesn't have to worry about, okay, what about that thing that I need to do with this project? Your computer can take, and then what happens is you look and you identify what's on there and go, okay, well, this is important, this is important. Oh, this I don't even need to do anymore because my brain found another solution to the problem that it may not have been able to find if I had kept it crowded with the ability to or crowded with the with the thought that I'd need to buy lemons, right? You know what I mean?
So I've got 42 notebooks that I threw on my floor over here, right?
Yeah.
So,
Again, you're an edge case, though. You and I are edge cases.
but and some of the executives that I speak with though, and I talk with them, they also tell me that what they do is that they will jot some stuff down on their iPhone reminders. They'll use Drafts, they'll use Evernote, they'll use SpringPad. They will jot some stuff down on a sticky note piece of paper, or they'll find some loose piece of paper that's in their suit jacket, and they'll write some notes down. So they've got notes everywhere. So I guess I'm wondering, Mike, is there a right and a wrong way of capture? Should you have a specific tool and always use that one? I mean, help us understand that more.
You know what? To me, it's subjective. I'm a big believer in making sure you have a tool to capture, as opposed to making sure that you use the same tool to capture. If that makes any sense. So like that's why I have my. But the intent needs to be, you need to build the habit of, hey, I just came home. I was out at the pub. I sat down. I wrote about 4 ideas down when I was out or whatever. And actually, I think when I was in Vancouver this past week. When I was listening to the Essentialism book, I actually wrote down a few ideas, and I'm like, oh, this other idea came to mind. I wrote it down in my field notes notebook, came home, and immediately processed it into the place it needed to go in. So that's the thing, is that the capture tool, think of it as much like an email inbox, as a loading bay as opposed to a warehouse. This is where the ideas come in, and then I'm going to process them later. So when David Allen talks about his weekly review, one of the first things he says is gather all your inboxes together. He doesn't say go to your inbox. He says gather that from all these different places, and that's the thing that people need to get behind. Now, some people, they're going to freak out if they have more than one inbox. So maybe they only use Evernote or SpringPad or reminders or whatever. But the tricky part about using digital alone, which is why I like paper and why you and I both have a lot of notebooks, is that, first off, there's something to be said about writing it down. There's some kind of retention thing there that happens. And people have done research on it, and I'm starting to do a bit more of it as well. But there's something there. And also the ability to know that if you don't have if your phone battery's dead or whatever, you've got that habit built as well. But finally, it's visible. When you put something into Evernote or into OmniFocus or Todoist or Asana, once you put it in there, until you consciously go back in there to look at it, it's gone. And that's why, electronic clutter is, we talk about going paperless. I'm all for that. But I think you get to a point where if everything is in the digital realm, it's far easier to forget it, right? And that's why I'm a big believer on using paper as like kind of the gateway. The gateway to the digital realm, because in some cases you may not have to put it in the digital realm. Like buy lemons, you write it down, you're out later on going to the grocery store, oh yeah, remember I wrote down buy lemons earlier, oh look, there's some lemons on sale, crossed off, didn't even have to go to the list. Whereas in a lot of cases, yeah, you're going to have to look at it and go, okay, I'm going to move this to where it needs to go. You and I have talked about how I add context to my captures as they go, so that my brain has to think even less when it looks at something on my list. So yeah, I think that a healthy understanding and awareness of how you work is going to determine what you're going to capture with regularly and where eventually all that stuff ends up.
So you mentioned something really important, though, and you talked about the weekly review. And during that weekly review, that at that point in time that you process everything.
Yep.
So a lot of folks that I talk to, and it's come up on the GTD Virtual Study Group a lot, is that the weekly review is the one area that a lot of people say, oh, no, I'll get to it. Yeah. And that could be a focus for, obviously, a whole other show. Yeah. But it's obviously during that weekly review or sooner, and I know in my case I do it, once a day, that you take basically all of your areas that you captured, whether it's analog or it's digital, and you're processing it. Now, what does that processing look like, Mike? Describe what that processing looks like.
Okay, so first off, when I process, I basically will grab any of my notebooks that I know that I haven't captured, I've captured stuff in for that day. So for example, if I've got 3 different jackets I wear, I've gotten to the point now where if I make a point of wearing 1 jacket per day, so that I don't have multiple places to check. And that sounds really stupid.
Well, for me, it's not. I know what that's like.
No, but once you've done it often enough, it's like, okay. And so what happens is you gather all your information. So both email, for me, Evernote, all of my digital tools, my default notebooks or holding areas, I've called inbox. So in Evernote, it's called My Notebook by default. I changed that name to inbox because it's a trigger, right? So I know, I have to process this. Same thing with, all the pages. So and the notepads I use, the cheaper ones are like little ones I got from JetPens. They're like a Japanese one, and you can just rip off. They're little tiny ones. So I put those are the ones that are in most of my jackets. And then I got the Field Notes ones. So if I want to process those, I just rip those sheets out and put them into my physical inbox that I have at my desk. The digital stuff, I'll go through my email, and I will literally say, all right, what is this? Is this a piece of information that I need to put into Evernote or SpringPad, or is this a task that I need to put into Todoist or Asana, depending on which one I'm using for depending on projects or workspaces. In most cases, for most people, it'll be this needs to go to Evernote or SpringPad, not one or the other. This needs to go to my task manager of choice. None of those should stay in your email inbox, because your inbox, again, loading bay, not warehouse. So you need to put those someplace. Same thing with your physical stuff. You're going to look at them and go, okay, where does this go? Does it go to my physical filing cabinet? Oh, wait, there's some tasks on here. Do I move them to Todoist? Oh, there's a piece of information here. I need to put that into Evernote under this. So that's what that processing is about, and it does take time, a lot of time, especially when you first start doing it. But once you start doing it, you get better and better and better at it, because you start to realize, hey, how do I expedite this process? So, for example, when I capture stuff, I'm very clear on what it is, so I know where it goes quicker, so I can speed that up. But also, you get faster at it because you're more aware of your responsibilities. You're more aware of what you've got going on. So you're not sitting back going, what does this apply to again? Or, oh boy, I have this other project that I completely forgot about, and now I don't have time. You'll get to a point where you're going to be able to process things faster, because you'll ultimately have less to process on so many levels. But the key is to start that. And yeah, the weekly review, you're right, notoriously, we're all bad at that from time to time. I mean, you and I do daily stuff, but there's days where we don't, which is nice. Sure. But that's nice, because we built it daily, so if we skip 2 days, we're still feeling like we're ahead of the game, as opposed to somebody who doesn't do a weekly review and they're like, okay, well, the quarter's up now, let's do a quarterly review. And I think that those kind of reviews are also critical, but you need to be able to look at your weekly review and go, I got to process this, celebrate what I've done, acknowledge what I haven't done, and move forward.
But you said something important though, Mike, which is that you get to that habit. But a lot of people that we talk to actually have great difficulty building a successful habit in capturing, and it's easier to say, take the notebooks out of your suit pocket, or the little volants out of your your jeans pocket, or whatever it is, and gather all of your notes from your meetings that you've had throughout the week. But and then take all of your tasks, put it in your task app, put all your reference stuff, put it in your reference app, and that sounds great. But how do you keep yourself accountable? What tips or best practices do you have, Mike, to keep yourself accountable so that it can become a successful habit?
I think that actually, funnily enough, it does start with a weekly review. When I was doing the weekly review and I'd find things or get emails and seeing that I would be missing certain things, it was because I wasn't capturing at the time that it came in. So most people are afraid to do that, take that time during those brief moments to capture that, or to put it where it needs to go. I think this is where you have to appeal to the human side of things, as opposed, you have to say, look, the idea of capturing is just as much about capturing your thoughts and ideas as it is about capturing the life you want.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. So can you say that again? Because I like that.
Sure. So I mean, the idea of capturing isn't just about the idea of capturing your thoughts, tasks, ideas, but it's really about capturing the life you want. Whether it's, you want to excel at work, whether you want to spend more time with your family, whether you want to go on that great vacation. I mean, how many people have gone, I can't wait to go on that vacation? And the only time they ever really think about it again is when they get an email in their inbox from like Cruises Online or something like that, because they one time subscribed to it. And all that is, every time they get that email, they get the reminder of, the cruise. Oh, well, delete. I'm not going to have time for it. I mean, if you start to make... Capturing is another example of making measured progress towards your tasks, goals, projects, all that stuff. And if you think about it in that regard, if you think about it in a higher level thing where it's like, hey, because that's what GTD is. Most people, when they read it, and we've talked about this before, and I'm sure the study group has as well, where the first time you read GTD, it's the capture thing is what really sticks. And that's why most people go, forget this. That's it, because it's too hard. It's too hard to capture everything. And then the more you read it, you realize that really the book, chapter 1 is about capture, and then the high level stuff, the horizons of focus, are near the end of the book, right? Really, it should be like this. The reason you're making the list in the first place is because of the things that are on the higher levels, right? Think about it the same way. When you're capturing stuff, it's not about the necessarily that task or that idea or that whatever that you're capturing, the buying lemons. It's about the, hey, I want to make a really nice meal for my family. It's going to involve lemons. That's why we're buying lemons. And I mean, you're not going to think about that every single time, but the more you do it, you realize, hey, I'm offering more. I'm contributing more. I'm more competent, and that additional competency is going to help you build the life, craft the work, all that stuff that you want to do more. And not only that, but you're going to get better at curating it too. So the more you capture, the better you're going to be able to look at that list when you process your list and go, ugh, that was dumb. Why'd I write that down? But it's better to have written it down and have it be dumb than to not have written it down and rack your brain about that dumb thing you forgot to write down.
That's right. Now, from a tactical side of things,
Mm-hmm.
is there a right way of capturing, Mike? For example, I've had Ryder Carroll on the show here with the Virtual Study Group, interviewed Ryder. Ryder's system has, caught on through social media and has become the new favorite of how to capture information. I think it's a good system, and if it works for you, that's great. And then there's also, Mike, you have a system as well. You've got a strike-through system. So, and I like your strike-through system as well. I think it makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. But I guess my question is, do you need to layer complexity onto capturing information, getting it out of your head onto paper, onto a digital program, or can you just say, I'm going to capture it and get it out? Do you need a system? In other words, within your system.
I think everything, the foundation of all this stuff is systems. I mean, I think GTD is a systematic approach. All these things are systemized because people work better in systems. I mean, when you have a system in place, you can work within the system, which is, I think, what Ryder's stuff. I mean, when you think about it, the bullet journal really is it's a day minder, but it's structured in a completely different way, right? And it's a workflow that he uses. Patrick Rohn, another friend of mine, he uses the Dash Plus system. Very simple stuff, but it's how he processes things. It's how his workflow goes. For me, mine was just initially writing things down. That's the key, as you said. Like, I mean, the system gets built upon the populating of the system, right? Like, okay, I'm capturing all this stuff. Then eventually you get to the point where it's like, okay, how do I make this process more meaningful? And some people need that right away. And that's why when I write things down, so like, for example, I've got my little idea board thing right here, right? So I'll write this down, like, prepare for meeting with Daniel Gold. Right? I didn't put anything. That's what I used to do. But really, that doesn't tell me all that much right at face value. So if I was to go in here and then write all of a sudden, all right, well, Daniel's a bit of a bear to meet with, so I'm going to do this.
It's true.
And I just add this little circle thing there, which you can see, right? That to me is, so anytime I add something to my list, I will put a circle around a letter, and that letter represents the context. So, for example, H stands for high energy. So preparing for a meeting with Daniel is going to take some high energy. So I know by looking at this right away what context to assign to it, and I can go from there. Now, if I wanted to go even further, I could say, okay, show strike-through system, right? So I'll just put strike-through system. And then if I did this and this, like, this is how quickly it takes me. So I mean, I did some shorthand there, but show strike-through system, you can see that I've got a triangle, which is P for Productivityist, because that's the realm that I want to, or that's what I want to talk about. That's the project that falls under. Or you could use it for workspaces, or you could just use it for areas of responsibility, right? So home, work, off, whatever. And then, it's normal energy for me for that. But you also notice I wrote it in green, right? Because green is work-related stuff for me. So I actually use color as well. So for me, that thing, people go, oh, wow. I mean, I remember when I wrote the blog post about it, somebody commented, so you wrote an entire blog post about how to write a to-do list. And I said, no. I wrote a blog post about how to systemize your capturing process so that your list is a list worth doing. You understand it. Because context, anytime you layer it, you're adding more value and more meaning to it. maybe just for you. In the case of Ryder Carroll's bullet journal, he's managed to do it for a whole bunch of people, right? Because a bunch of people have gone, oh, this makes so much sense to me. So really, ultimately, it's about the building of the habit first, and then you start to make that your own. Look at David Say's Emergent Task Planner. Look at look at all these little things that people, like the Pomodoro techniques, another great example, right? Like that's a task management system, and some people strictly use that. They'll take their task list, plunk it in, just use Pomodoro and knock it out like that. And then some people said, well, 25 minutes is too short. So what if I did like an hour on this? Or, I mean, you can modify it, and there's nothing wrong with that, because ultimately it's not about getting the system right. It's about using the system that works for you to get the right things done.
And that's something that's important to really highlight. Let's get out of the tactical for a second, and let's as you said, blow it out to the much higher level here, and think of the really, really big picture here. This is about getting the right kinds of things done. It's about creating a much more successful life for yourself, because if you are able to capture all of the things that are going on in your mind about work, about home, about the charities that you're involved with, the boards that you're on, all these other things that you have with the multiple areas of focus and roles and responsibilities that you have, if you can get that out of your head and get that into whether it's a notebook or Evernote, whatever it is, and then organize it and process it and organize it, review it, and then get those things done, then you would be more successful, because you've got this system in place by which you can count on yourself to get it out of your head, right?
Yeah, John Cleese has this great talk where he talks about the two things you need to be truly creative. You need time and you need space. When you capture things, you give yourselves the luxury of being able to get a handle on both of those things, because you're going to be able to process things a lot faster, because you're not trying to think about the things you're trying to process. You're just looking at them and evaluating them, whether you've added context to them initially or what have you. But the other thing is, when you go, and I'm thinking about this, when you go fishing, you don't go, I'm only going to go fishing in a lake that has trout, because you would never find a lake that just has trout. You have no idea what is in that lake, but you go anyway. And then you start catching fish, and as you catch them, if some perch show up, you're going to throw them back, right? You stay out there until you catch enough trout, and then you come back, and you get to decide that. Now, if you don't catch any trout, then you're probably going to go back out again and do it. But that's the key is that when you're capturing this stuff, if you don't capture all the things that are coming your way, then you're not gonna find the right things. You're just going to be trying to pick the right things out of the air, out of your brain since you haven't captured them, and you're going to miss stuff. And it's better to have that stuff at hand in front of you and then be able to evaluate it, as opposed to trying to figure out what it was you were meant to evaluate in the first place. It sounds so primitive, and that's why people go, oh, I don't need to. I'm smart. I'm super smart. Well, if you're so smart, then let your brain do the real work. Let your brain make the real great things happen. And smart people write stuff down, period. They get it down, whether it's again, digitally, analog. And with my system, again, like if I wrote down something captured and I knew I finished it, like I've done now, I can actually literally say, okay, I've prepared for the meeting or I've shown you the strike-through system. I can just cross it off. So it's crossed off now. Now, if I'm planning for a meeting and it's not done, I can go and I just put an arrow next to it. So that means I've moved it into the system that I trust. If it's open, guess what? I haven't dealt with it yet. Like, that's simple. That's visual cues. People love that stuff because it's, for me, anything that is simple, obvious, and scalable, which is an acronym I use, SOS. If it's simple, obvious, and scalable, it's something that you should really look at. It's worth your time. Whereas if it's simple but not so obvious, then you're going to spend time, trying to figure out where that thing is supposed to go. It's not so obvious to you. But if it's scalable, then you may say, all right, well, it's simple and scalable. It may not be so obvious. I can train myself for that obviousness, right? If it's obvious and scalable, but it's not so simple, you can get better at it so that it's not as difficult for you. But you may not want to jump in there right away because simple will help you actually build a habit. The one I'd like the least is if it isn't scalable, to me it's not worth You know, I mean, that's why there's, unless you can figure out a way to make it scalable. Things like reminders. You and I have talked about reminders earlier. You can scale reminders to a point. You can turn it into a task manager to a point. You just need to decide if that point is going to be scalable enough. So paper, one of those great tools. It's simple, it's obvious, it's scalable. Like what people have done with paper, right? That to me, when you can start to use those things and apply it to the capturing process or to whatever tool you're using or whatever system you're taking on, when you use those three criteria, to me, it's going to put you in a far better position to understand why you're using it in the first place, which will reinforce the use of it.
If I was one of your coaching clients, Mike, and I told you that this was the one area that I was struggling in the very most, give me one tip that you're going to walk away from our meeting with that's going to help me have much more confidence and feeling like this is something that I could take on and I could be successful in.
The biggest tip I would say is get yourself a bunch of like cheap notebooks. Put them everywhere, and I mean, like, put them by your bedside table, put them in your jacket pockets, put them by the front door to remind, like, put one by the front door, and I did this for the longest time before I put them in my jacket pockets, especially at summertime because I'm not going to wear a jacket. I have a notebook that's just there to remind me as a trigger, hey, don't forget your notebook. Hey, don't forget a notebook. Like, it sounds really stupid for a lot of people, and I've had people, but once you start to build it, and I mean, as a guy who, you know, wrote comedy and stuff like that, as a writer, I kept a notebook by the bedside table, and I still do. Because if you wake up in the middle of the night, and I mean, this has happened to everybody. You wake up in the middle of the night with this great idea, and then you're like, oh, I'll remember it in the morning.
Never happens.
Never happens. So that's the other thing is I say, look, if you don't want that to happen throughout your day, build that habit. Have a pen and a notebook with you wherever you go. Doesn't matter if you like to use digital tools or not. Bring that with you. Build that capture habit. If you can do that for the 30 days that, you know, or 21 days or whatever the habit building routine takes. For some people it takes long. For some it takes, you know, shorter periods of time. If you can do that, then you're going to find the value in this stuff. Because as soon as they do 2 weekly reviews in a row and process this stuff, they realize, oh my God, I would never have remembered that. Or, oh wow, I'm so glad I wrote that down. That's the biggest, and it's a hard one for people, and I'll check in with them. Like, I've got coaching clients where I will occasionally drop them in. I mean, I've captured this. I have a repeating task in my task manager where every 3 days I'm like, so how's the capturing going? Oh, and I actually have, and I've got the same thing happening my way. I've got my virtual assistant, because I'm working on a new book right now, not beyond the one I'm working on with Jeremy, and she'll email me every other day and say, so how's the big book coming along? And I'm like, damn it, I haven't started it today. So there's those things. I mean, in order to build that accountability, you need to help along the way. You need some help along the way, because I mean, and it's simple, but because we live in a world where there's so many things coming at us all the time, that simplicity gets lost in the shuffle. So if we can start to capture regularly and get better at that, then then everything else starts to funnel out from there.
Mike, you've got some really, really great tips, and I hope that everybody who's not only listened to this but also watched it really derives, you know, a ton of benefit and a lot of really great tips that you've passed on. I'm positive, I know this personally, obviously, is that there's many, many more tips on your website and in your books, in your tweets, your posts, etc. So, Mike, can you just tell people where is the best place that they can go to read more about what you're doing?
And go to Productivityist.com, and all my stuff's there. And then I've got the bi-weekly newsletter where I offer some exclusive stuff, and you can sign up for the newsletter there as well. So that'd be awesome. Thanks for having me, Daniel. I really appreciate it.
This has been great. You know, it's nice to have the virtual studio a little bit more personal, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm going to throw this in here at the very end. I had to wait till the end to do this, Mike.
I think I know where you're going.
If some people haven't exactly noticed this, Mike has a little bit of a bounce to him. When he gets very excited, he starts bouncing a little bit. Mike, what are you sitting on?
I sit on a yoga ball. So it helps because my desk is a standing desk. It's a modified standing desk. So, and I have a post about that at my site too. But I've been we're waiting. My late father-in-law had a big nice chair, so we're waiting for that to come. And in the meantime, I've been using this, and I actually quite like it because it gets me low enough to the floor. And then and you're right. When I get excited, it's like, yeah, you know.
You
No,
can
no,
see this isn't the first time we've had a video chat. I know when he gets excited, he gets passionate.
Yeah, it's like
he starts going up and down, right?
But no, it's great. I love it, and I mean, and I know a lot of people that will use this instead of sitting in a regular chair when they use a standing desk, because it does provide that balance and strengthening of the core. So.
That's great. Mike, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great having you. And until next time, everybody, thanks so much. And remember to capture all of your thoughts. Any questions, please send it into the comments or drop us a line at info@gtdvsg.com. Also, don't forget that we now have not just a Facebook page, but we also have a GTD Virtual Study Group Facebook group page. And it's been so great just with one show talking about it. We haven't really done any publicizing about it at all, and it's a great place to go because the conversations are much more fluid. You can ask us questions, post it, everybody will see it, everybody will have a chance to respond to those questions, and the GTD Virtual Study Group over the last 7 years has had tons of great resources, and I've uploaded those resources to the file section of the GTD Virtual Study Group Facebook page. It's a private page, so you have to ask to be invited. That way we're kind of controlling, if you will, what's going on, who's being invited to it. So please go ahead and check that out, and obviously check us out also on the Google Plus productivity page. Until then, thank you so much, everybody. Take care.